can go through life feeling just yucky and just horrible, not really understanding really why, and we can feel really sad and can't put our finger on exactly why. And perhaps it might be because you feel grieved. But you may ask yourself, well, I haven't lost anyone there or anything like that, so why would I feel grieved? Well, you feel grief when you experience any kind of loss, and it puts you in the process of bereavement, and it can be quite overwhelming. And to recognize when you are in grief is not a particularly easy thing to do. I remember after a divorce, it took a couple of years for me to realize that what I was experiencing was that I was grieving. And it's not until we identify what feelings that we are going through that we can actually deal with them and recover from them. So there are many aspects to understanding if we are in grief or not. I want to read you first of all an excerpt from my book to help us with those thoughts. I'm going to put my reading glasses on, and I can't read without them. And this is from an excerpt from chapter 1 called A Place to Start, and this will help us today. When we plan to take our journey of some kind, we take time to prepare. We are savvy travellers, and so we ensure that we have our navigation tools in hand, ensuring that they work as they should. Then when we become familiar with them, and before we get on the road, we come and visit the fuel station, which guarantees us a complete journey. If we don't, there's a good chance of getting lost and taking a detour or not getting to our intended destination at all. But now we have a goal, and we have a plan, and we are ready to begin our journey. Well, approaching grief is just like approaching a journey. If you are in grief, you are on a journey. And that's why in this book, Nothing Good About Grief, that I have on the cover of it, a road. And down the bottom it says, grief is a journey. And like all journeys, we need to prepare. And like all journeys, there is a beginning and there is an end. And many of us really don't realize that there is an end to this, that there is an end of the journey. You can recover. But we must recognize that we are in grief. So how do we do that? How can we recognize that what we are feeling and those overwhelming feelings that we are experiencing is actually grief? Well, there is 3 aspects to this. First, there is shock, then there is suffering, and then there is anger. And if you are experiencing some or all of them, you may be in grief. First of all, with shock. I remember as a young girl growing up in Australia, in South Australia, and we used to go out into the dead of night, into the bush on a hot summer's night to go racing around in our cars. And we never used to do it on the streets because we'd get into trouble and would be a nuisance to other people. But, you know, we knew people who had properties and would race around on the properties. And the lads loved going, what they called was rabbiting. I always felt sorry for the rabbits, but I wanted to be part of the group. So I went rabbiting with them. And so the first process of rabbiting was to bring them into a sense of shock so they can be caught or shot. And so how that was done, there were several cars who had their headlights on high beam, and we would sort of gather around and corral around rabbits. If we saw a rabbit, if we saw one, there'll be other rabbits with them, and we'll encircle them and shine these high beams at the rabbits, and the rabbits just used to stand there. I only went once because I couldn't bear this humane act of shocking these poor rabbits, but the experience serves a purpose today. What is shock? There they stood, those poor rabbits, like statues in the glaze of the headlights, and it always reminded me with their big eyes, them saying, if you could hear the words that they were saying, or perhaps their thoughts, they might have been saying, "Take me to your leader." Because that's what they look like, in those old science fiction movies where the human being or the entity would say, "Take me to your leader." And this is what these little things would look like. They were an absolute shock. They're actually frozen to the spot, and they couldn't move until those lights were turned off, and then they scurried away. And the boys had a whale of a time, and us girls didn't like it so much. But that's what shock is, and that's what happens to us when we are grieved. Particularly if the death of the loved one or a very sudden loss occurred in your life. Perhaps your husband or your wife or your partner walked into home and one day, which happened to me, and says, "I want a divorce." And you're in absolute shock because there was no reason or why or wherefores, and they don't want to discuss any of that. And so, your whole body seems to shut down. You're in complete shock. And it's when your blood pressure can lower, it's when your nerve centers seem to shut off and you become literally numb. And you may have said that to yourself, that I'm feeling really numb. Well, if you feel numb, you're in shock. And people look at you and thinking, well, you should be upset about this situation, and this is an awful situation you're in, and you're not reacting in any way. And it's because you're unable to react. You're in shock. And you're frozen to the spot, and you can't think. And sometimes shock can last days, hours, days, weeks, and for some people a lot longer than that. And that's when people really need to go into some sort of therapy to be able to bring them through that stage. But usually that is the first stage of a sudden loss. That is the second is a reaction to grief, is suffering. We suffer. Either we can suffer in our mind, body, or spirit, or in all three. And some people is great anguish of mind, and they suffer in their minds terribly. They can't sleep, or they sleep too much, and they can't think straight, or they overthink, and they can't switch their minds off. Some people, they just want to sit on the couch and not do anything, and yet others work their tail off, not resting at all. And through it all, it causes great suffering. Some people, it actually affects their bodies. They can have physical pain, and in grief in past years, I've experienced that. I remember my heart hurting. I remember laying down. I was ill for 2 weeks, and the pain in my heart was intense. I went to the doctors and they said, "There's nothing wrong with your heart." What it was is I was suffering a broken heart. I was in grief, and it came out as literal pain. It can come out as hypertension and heart palpitations and rapid breathing. It can come out in aches and pains in joints, swelling of joints, because the grief is so profound that it just affects our whole body, because those chemicals are released in our body, and the first place where bad chemicals usually go are deposited in our joint, which in turn affects our muscles. Some people suffer terrible and debilitating muscle weakness due to their experience of grief, and others are completely incapacitated, and they become invalid, and they are in bed, and it's no place to live. It's no way to live, and we can overcome this if we're recognizing what is happening to us and name it. The third usual symptom of grief is anger, and we feel angry about what's happened to us. We may be the person that has initiated the loss. We may be the person that has ended the relationship, or ended our job, or moved out of our house in a sense of loss. But we still feel angry because of the huge change. We may not be the person. Like me, you may have the person walk out on you, and that anger is profound, and you feel that you really want to take vengeance, and you don't, because that's not the right way. But the anger, it just wells up within you, and it's like a tight knot in your gut. You may feel the loss of your loved one and be angry with the loved one that has died because they have left you. They've promised you that they'll get well and they haven't, and they've gone, and you're angry with them because you are now alone. You may be angry with yourself because you feel that you could have done better in some way, done something different to change the situation. But anger is one of the hallmarks of grief. So putting those three things together, we really can see that either you can suffer, that they tend to overlap. You're not just in shock and that finishes, and then suffering and that finishes, and anger that finishes. They overlap, and depending on the person and how the person reacts, they can overlap quite a bit, or just a little bit. And if you recognize what's happening to you, you can call it for what it is. You can call, how to deal with it then. And to help you recognize these or some of these symptoms, you can write them down, write your feelings down in a journal, and or do a video journal, or just pump something out on the computer. However, what you can help for you to make sense of your feelings, and you can actually see them and you can tick them off. There are many therapists that say there are more than 3 reactions or symptoms to grief. I like to stick to the 3 because I like to keep things simple and not complicated, and when we're in grief, it's difficult to cope with a lot. We already feel overwhelmed and we don't want anything to overwhelm us even more, and that's why in my book I've just got those 3 symptoms, and of course they can be built on. It depends on who you are and your reaction to them, but they are the basic symptoms of grief. So once you recognize that you are grieved, you can be kinder to yourself. Don't hold things in because it will just make it worse. Recognize that you're in loss. Grief is a very private thing. It's hard to share with somebody, even somebody who's very close to you, exactly how you feel, and it's easy for you to be misunderstood. So don't look for other people to comfort you and to bring the answer to your problem. Look to yourself from within you, and the answers will come. Take responsibility of your own emotions and say to yourself, how am I going to deal with this? Say to yourself, what am I dealing with? And then perhaps go through these 3 processes. Say to yourself, yes, I will recover. Yes, I am in recovery. That's those positive affirmations, because if you rely on a particular person or people, if you rely on an event or somewhere, or on the holiday to Spain or something to make you feel better, you probably won't, and you probably won't enjoy that holiday like you deserve to, and you probably won't deserve those enjoy those people around you like you deserve to, because you're trying to deal with all these emotions. Recognizing that you're an autonomous being, mind, body and spirit, and you are absolutely loved. And what helps me? I pray and I ask God to strengthen me, and God does. And I have to say that over 40 years of experiencing grief and being trained as a specialist in grief through coaching and counselling, and working with a lot of people in 3 different countries, in Australia, in the United States, and here in the UK, with grief and many other problems as well. I know that it is possible to come through it. It is a subject you would like me to tackle. Please do so. Tell me and put those comments down below. I'm a high percentile dyslexic, and I'm going to make future videos on how to cope with adult dyslexia, because I didn't know I was a dyslexic until I was in my late 40s when I discovered that I was a dyslexic, and I'm going to make a series on that. And so please subscribe down below, and subscribe and keep watching. I have a website as well, and that all that information is down below, and the information on how to get my book is down below, and it'll be great to see you again on these videos, and to establish a community of people who enjoy holistic living, mind, body and spirit. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. And remember to live life on purpose. purpose, in hope.